Really, the topic of today is what are you talking about on a regular basis? What character do you play in the lives of your friends or family? What are you talking about? Are you talking about how hard things are? Are you talking about how fun things are? Are you talking about the person you dislike the most? Like, are you a person who kind of gossips and how that person is ruining your life? Think about what your general conversation is, and then think about how your life is playing out. Well, there really is good neurological reason for this, science even behind why the stories that you tell chronically tend to be your own future. You didn't even know it, but you're actually a fortune teller, and it has everything to do with your conversation. Hi, I'm Liz Larson.
And I'm Bill McKenna.
And together, we created the Cognomovement system. And we'd like to welcome you to the New Life Perspectives radio show,
where we're going to be sharing with you tools, tips, and ideas that are going to change your life.
Hello in UK Health Radio Land. I'm Liz Larson, and our friend Bill McKenna is back. Hi, Bill McKenna.
Hey, Liz.
Hey, and we are the hosts of the New Life Perspectives radio show here on the UK Health Radio Network. And we're also the team that created the Cognomovement system. So as you guys know, Bill and I are always chit-chatting off camera and, throughout the day as we create the Cognomovement planet, universe, world, right? And we're talking about how your story creates your life. And that is a big thing in Cognomovement that we're always talking about. But let's dig in, Bill, and help people get an idea of how the stories that they're telling are actually creating the life that they're living, maybe in ways they like and maybe in ways they don't.
Well, gosh, I tell you what, I have not only so many of these actual live stories of examples, but myself included. So I'll use myself as an example so that people can kind of understand what I'm talking about. And as a youth, I was what I call bad bastard Billy. Can we say that on the radio?
I think we can.
I think it's under the words that can be said. But for whatever reason, I felt that way. I had babysitters growing up. I grew up with 8 sisters, 8, 2 older, and then so many younger. And I'm a boy, kind of an active outside type of, rambunctious boy, whatever you might call it. But I had picked up inadvertently a feeling, and it may have rooted in something extremely basic, and that is that we humans, we have 2 examples in our life that help to establish the course of what goes on. And what one of those things that is one of the things is a father, and the other one is a mother. Now, here's the interesting thing: is what is it like to be a man, and what is it like to be a woman, and how does a woman treat a man and a man treat a woman? Well, we get this is called our primary relationship. Why? Because it's the first relationship. of our life. So my father, well, he had, later on we figured out he had 3 diagnosed mental illnesses, and he was, he shall we say, he had some problems, and my father obviously felt judged during the process. Took on a particularly hard job, raising 12 children. 12. I mean, the soul that came in to do this and take on all these mental illnesses, it's what an incredibly hard job without any mental illness. So, being a little boy, right, is I took on, oh, this is how you feel, right? Because there's little separation in between yourself and your parents when you begin, because of the fact of your particular brainwave state. Right now, as you're listening to this on the radio, you're in a beta brainwave state, high level of awareness. You're accepting and rejecting what I'm telling you. You're reasoning. You maybe drop down a little bit if you're driving listening to me, because you're in what they call an alpha brainwave state, a light meditative brainwave state. But when you go to sleep, you drop down into what they call theta. And this theta brainwave state is the exact same brainwave state as what we utilize when we hypnotize somebody. We try to get them down into that brainwave state. Now, as it turns out, between the ages of 0 and 7, guess what? 0 and 7, you're in the theta brainwave state. This is the period of time when you begin to be programmed. And who's doing the programming? Mom and dad. So as mom is treating dad in a certain way, then you're like, oh, that's how it is. And it's you. That's why it's terribly important as a father to say nice things about the mother as a father, because really you're saying it about your daughter or your son. That's what they're being programmed as. So anyway, back to the story. We know with Liz Larson and myself work in what we call your neurology. And your neurology is what that whole hypnosis thing is about. You program it, right? That is your subconscious. So we get programmed at this early age, and that becomes the feeling. And with the feeling, whatever feeling that is, we will tell ourselves a story that equals the feeling. How many times, Liz, like you've been on vacation, right? In your favorite place is Italy, right? And you go in Italy and you're eating Italian food that's so good, right? And you tell yourself a story. This food is delicious. Ah, the air is good, the sunshine. You tell yourself a story of this is good. Because when you get to Italy, you're on vacation and you feel good. You're around family that loves you, that you don't get to see all the time. And you have this great feeling. And all of a sudden, you take a bite of bread with some Italian butter or a little bit of Italian cheese. And oh, yes, it's good. It's good. So, this is the story that we tell ourselves. And we're all doing this. For myself, Liz here, we're talking about her feeling of being on vacation and her lightness and her fun and then eating good things. And let's say a downside story, I get a feeling of I'm bad bastard Billy. And then what happens is I look for the evidence outside me to support it. So I will find a person that will start to tell me things, that will support my feeling. And if they are not telling me, this is super important. If you're listening and you get one thing out of this today, if you get one thing out of this today, listen to this carefully. The person, they will be speaking to you, and you will interpret that what they really said is bad bastard Billy. Or you'll interpret it as, oh, life is wonderful. It's because you are interpreting the world relative to the feeling. So this is the thing that myself and Liz are excited to talk to you about today, is how does this mechanism work? Now, we explored just a piece of the mechanism there, but there's so much more to it. So we're in this whole thing, we're going to tell some stories of different people and this and what they are out there, experiencing. And most of all, here's the big one. It doesn't have to be that way. You can actually change this in your body, that feeling, and a new story emerges. I know you're like, if you're driving, it would be like you stepped on the brake and you hit it in reverse and you start backing up because I know you want to hear about this. Liz?
Well, it's interesting. So there's stories that you hear. So what Bill's talking about, that we're so impressionable as a child that even one off the cuff comment from somebody, an uncle, an aunt, a teacher, another kid, on the right day will influence the way your nervous system reacts the rest of your life. I had an uncle once who really wasn't right in the mind, and he was soothing his daughter. She was upset that I had a good boyfriend and I was popular in school. I was a lot older than her. I was in high school. She was a middle schooler going through her awkward phase. They were in a position of not having a home. They were staying with our family. And her father soothed her within earshot of me by saying, "Don't worry, she'll be nothing but a fat baby factory." That stuck in my mind, my consciousness, for a long time. So there's stories that you hear that affect your neurology and have your neurology running a pattern of protection against that. You're either looking for it and fighting against, or you're actually just accepting it and moving into. So the body has a toward or away kind of a situation. It's like a person who's been abused will often be an abuser, or they are a staunch advocate against it. You don't really usually have any middle ground. So stories that you hear, things you experience. The opposite side of that, which is kind of what I wanted to focus on today, is the stories that we tell. Now, I want you to think about a character in your life. We all have these characters in our lives. They stand out, and they're the person you can count on to have some crazy stuff going on in their life. What is the story they will tell you within 5 minutes of you seeing them? Is it a calamity? Is it someone cheated on them? Is it they lost money? So one of my brothers had this ongoing thing with restaurants. He was constantly talking about it, that no matter where he went, they screwed up his food. And everywhere he went, they screwed up his food. I mean, the universe went to great lengths to create some crazy situations in which his food as a restaurant would be screwed up.
Oh my
I mean, great lengths. It was hilarious eating with him, but he was always so mad. And then guess what? He would tell that story for the next week. "Oh my God, we went to the gold miner and you're never going to believe what they did. They served me a pancake that was black charcoal on one side and fluffy white on the opposite. And 9 times out of 10, that's exactly what would happen. Like, who in their right mind would serve you that?" But he would get served it. So that's kind of a funny story, but it was true. He focused on it and talked about it. But then there's people who I spoke with someone recently who every person they ever dated or were married to cheated on them in these outlandish ways, just outlandish ways. And they were talking to me about a relationship they wished would have continued. And the story they told about it was that person cheated on them in the most horrific and ridiculous way. And yet, that was the relationship they aspired to. So, really, the topic of today is what are you talking about on a regular basis? What character do you play in the lives of your friends or family? What are you talking about? Are you talking about how hard things are? Are you talking about how fun things are? Are you talking about the person you dislike the most? Like, are you a person who kind of gossips? And how that person is ruining your life? Think about what your general conversation is, and then think about how your life is playing out. Well, there really is good neurological reason for this, science even, behind why the stories that you tell chronically tend to be your own future. You didn't even know it, but you're actually a fortune teller, and it has everything to do with your conversation. We're about ready to take a break, but I heard something I really liked yesterday. This woman was talking about how busy her life is. And you know how you say, how you doing? Oh my God, I'm so busy. I'm one of those people right now. And, I have to go do this talk, or I have to go on a plane, to Maine, or I'm so busy. And she said she changed one word, and the word is I get to. Oh my gosh, I get to go and teach this amazing class. And I'm so excited about it. Or I get to work with this amazing client. Now, there's a reason we don't do it. And after the break, we'll talk about a societal reason that we don't use that kind of language. So we have to hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio. UK Health, take it away. And we are back. And we're ended the last segment talking about how there's a really good reason why we don't use this sort of positive language. Oh my gosh, I'm doing so well. You know what? I get to go work with, like this week's, my practitioners who I love so dearly, and my friend, Bill McKenna. It's always so much fun to be together. And we're going to spend, some glorious days in San Diego. And you know what? It's going to be beautiful and sunny. And I'm so excited about it. Why don't we do that, Bill McKenna? Why don't we talk like that?
Isn't it interesting? It's just one word. It's just one word. I get to, right? When was the last time you used that word?
It's brilliant, right? It really is such a small shift that changes everything.
Yeah, but we don't use it. We're in fear mode, fear of being judged by others. Like, yeah, that's not okay. Not okay to be happy and be having a good time. So that's could be one of the reasons.
Yeah.
But there could be many others that are stuck within our storytelling, our neurology.
Exactly. That's right. So, what did your parents talk about? Did they talk about positive things? Were they people that were excited about doing things? If they were, did you notice other people say they were bragging? This was a big deal, especially if you're raised in a religious circumstance. Don't you dare be a bragger. Don't you have pride? Don't you think too highly of yourself? I remember when I was a kid, there was this woman, an elderly woman that I adored. She was in her 80s, and she did my Bible study with me. That was a big thing in our church. Kids went to some other family, and they did a Bible study with them. And I would, out of respect for her, because I was taught to, dress nicely. So by that time, I was maybe 13. I wore just a little makeup. I fixed my hair, and I wore decent clothes. And I'd ride my bike to her house. So this woman tells my mom, she thinks too much of herself. And my mom's like, what in the world? She said, well, she dresses up when she comes to see me. And my mom corrected her and said, that's because I taught her to dress out of respect for who she's seeing. That's for you, not for her. But think about that. You don't want a 13-year-old to think too much of themselves. I know this young woman who is absolutely stunningly beautiful, tall, red hair, like you can't believe, down to her waist, eyes the color of blue you can't imagine. She modeled when she was a child. And they say, oh my God, she's just so vain. She thinks she's so beautiful. She is beautiful. Why would we tone that down? But in our society, a fatal flaw is thinking too much of yourself.
Isn't that weird?
Isn't it weird? So we tend to skew our stories toward the negative, right?
Always. And this is very, very cultural.
It is.
In certain countries around the globe, it is celebrated, especially in Latin countries. And it's celebrated so much that they talk about it. They have their own ways of talking about it, like the frogs in a bucket. And the way that they look at it is, when, let's say, one frog, is starting to get out of the bucket and he's got his hand on the rim, what they do is they pull that frog right back into the bucket. They don't want anybody getting out,
No.
There are other cultures that is one frog gets to the top and they reach their hand down and they pull the other ones up.
Yeah.
But this is not common. It's more common to have the other.
Well, do you know there's a lot of superstition in it? In at least Sicilian culture, you would never say a child's beautiful without touching them because you're actually putting a curse on them. In the US, you don't dare reach out and touch someone's child. That's not acceptable, especially if you don't know them. That would be a terrible thing to do. But for them, if you say the child's beautiful and you don't touch them, you're actually jealous and you're putting a little evil eye on them. My friend, who is half Filipino, her mother, they would always say how ugly she was and how she was chicken-legged. She was absolutely beautiful girl. But the reason is that would cast, like a devil on her, or it'd be superstitious that something bad might happen. So a lot of times, here in the States, we do these things, we follow our culture, our traditions, but we have no idea why. We don't know why we're doing it. We just know that there's this need to put a little bit of a negative slant on what's happening in our lives, even if our lives are wonderful. Let's switch gears just a tiny bit. Let's talk about other kinds of stories, Bill. It always happens to me that, I'm always broke. I'm always in pain. I can never, ever, no matter what I do, find the right relationship. I just can't seem to get ahead. I'm so stuck. Yeah. What about these, Bill?
So these are things that we hear every single day. And it comes down to one basic thing. And that is that when you have a feeling, what happens is we think thoughts equal to the feeling. It's called a level of consciousness. A consciousness is that the understanding that we had come to thus far in our life. Like, for example, I can't get ahead. That is an understanding. That's how it is. There's not enough money to go around. I can't tip well. We don't tip well as a culture because why should we? Why should we tip well to those people? Don't you know about my culture? We don't we don't tip. You've not heard that, right? Well, that is simply a level of understanding, and that's how it is. But for all of us that are going through our lives, is to ask yourself a question. This simple question is the story that I'm telling myself truly resourceful or unresourceful? Is it really resourceful to be poor financially?
But Bill, let me stop you. But it's true.
But it is.
It's true, Bill. My story's true. It's not that it's resourceful or unresourceful, Bill. It's how it is.
That's exactly it. You don't understand what it's like to grow up in my city or be here in this country or or to be surrounded with these people or all of these different things. But it will appear as true. Is this truth serve you? And like for example, there's an interesting thing, like in certain religions around the world, that poverty is a virtue.
Yeah, right.
It is a virtue for the in many of the Christian traditions, Catholic, the priests take a vow of poverty.
Yeah.
They don't have. I don't own anything. You know, and if you're a Buddhist monk, what do? You got some robes. You got some robes. You got a little cup, and that's about it. And then people donate and they take care of them. But they have disavowed, all that, and that became like something really great, right? Oh,
That's the thing. We all should aspire to be broke as hell. I mean, what a way to manipulate a population.
Right? Give me 10% of your money, every month, or every week, do that. So yes, it's absolutely, it's an interesting thing that takes place.
So let's flip that just a little bit, Bill. So let's start. We're about halfway through our conversation for today, and let's flip it to what really is the opposite of this. And it occurred to me while you were talking that this is exactly why we do the work we do, because we get to see what the opposite. And Bill said, well, maybe I said, is it true? My story's true. But what we get to see is when the nervous system lets go of its perspective, which is the work we do, what's true gets flipped upside down on its head and can be the exact opposite. And I mean, in 5 minutes, we've told 1,000 stories about this. But so let's flip what you just said on its head, Bill, that the thing to be is poor. The less material things you have, the easier you get into heaven. And yet on this planet, every day, if you can hear this show, you've got a little bit of means. There are miraculous, wonderful things to experience. Bill just got back from Catalina Island. Boy, is it gorgeous, right? And he sent pictures from there, just an experience. It's so beautiful. The water and, the people, and there was a band playing, and it's wonderful. And you need to have some means to experience it. If you can get on an airplane and go visit another culture, the experience will change you forever. It's so beautiful, right? If you're a grandparent who can buy the heart's desire of your grandchild and watch them open it at a birthday, there is nothing more beautiful. We are here on this planet to have experiences. Why else did we come? Unless you believe we're here to be punished. That's something else we have to talk about another day. But the idea that you should be poor, and it bleeds into our daily conversations. Well, how are you doing, Liz Larson? Oh, I'm real busy. Things are tough right now for everybody. What am I doing? I'm looking for a match because I know you're going to say, oh, yeah, things are tough right now for everybody. Did you see the stock market today? Yeah, I did. And did you notice that this thing catastrophe happened, right? We find our matches on the planet in terrible. But switch it on its head for a moment. How are you today, Liz? You know I'm doing so well. Tomorrow I get to go to teach my practitioners, and I'm so excited. And Bill McKenna is gonna be there with me, and we're gonna teach these people, and something brand new is gonna happen because it does every time. And do you know what else happens? When we get together and we teach our practitioners, there's always a miracle. I can't wait to see, right? You can imagine if I'm not talking to my friend Bill McKenna or somebody else who knows this kind of language, they're going to look at you like you're nuts. Like, okay. Because they don't have any matches for magic, for miracles, for fun, for the idea that you get to say, I'm going to do something amazing.
Yeah.
Neurologically, they have no match. The conversation dies. And this, I think, my friends, is what we're afraid of. Let's take our break right here and hear from the good folks at the UK Health Radio Network. And in just a minute, Bill and I get to come back and have a more of a conversation with you about how do you change your story? Okay, UK Health, take it away. And we're back. We're talking about how the stories that you tell, the stories that you heard when you were a kid and the stories that you tell now daily, moment by moment, really do determine what your life looks like. What can we do to start to shift this other than a little bit of shifting our language?
You know, this is the difficult thing as far as, people have been told all their lives that, you know what, you got to change your mind. You got to feel different. You got to look at the positive. But you know what? They don't feel it. I don't feel good inside.
It's true.
I feel down. I feel apathetic, like there is no hope. I feel like afraid, and this, by the way, is intentional in that there's constant programming of you need to be afraid, you need to be afraid, you need to be afraid from all the news and everything. So the trick here, and it is a trick, I guess you could say, more than a trick, it is a series of particular exercises. Use the neurology to correct the neurology. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, again, your feeling comes first, and that is your neurological response and a automatic reaction. You never chose to be afraid. You just are afraid. You never chose to be angry. You simply are angry. You never chose to be jealous. You just are jealous. So there's a few ways that are super, super basic. They're part of the Cognomovement system that you can begin to change.
Let's put a demarcation here. Let's do level one thing that you can do to change is notice what you notice and feel what you feel. That's what Bill just said. I'm about to tell you my story. It's going to come out of my mouth, but now I'm going to notice it. What am I talking about when you ask me how I am? Notice what you notice. And then how does it feel to actually let that come out of my mouth? So that's level one. Sorry to interrupt, Bill. Give them the next one.
This is really, really important. So as Liz just said, we're noticing what story is coming out of my mouth. And notice the level two to this is, where do I have feeling in my body? There is a place that is associated with this story that's in my body. Take a second, just take a second. You've got your story, and by the way, it might be really, really, really close to you, like your boss that you see 8 hours a day, your husband, your wife, your brother-in-law, your mother-in-law, your whoever, somebody that's living in your house or whatever, but they're a constant source of annoyance or fear or whatever the story that is not a great story.
Well, and there's a really easy way to do this. When you go to tell your story, you notice it, and then notice, does your body feel a little tense? Notice just the surface tension. Do your shoulders feel a little tight? Does the story feel almost like old and worn out and drug through the mud? Or on the opposite, does it feel like forward movement? Does it feel excitement? Do your eyes light up when you tell the story? So it's really simple. You don't have to know a lot. It's the noticing. Is there some tension in my body anywhere, or a very particular feeling like, it hits you right in the gut, or your throat tightens up, right? Or you notice the space between your eyes clenching down. So if you're now playing this game with Bill and I, and you're like, start to tell a story, become aware of the topic, and next become aware of how does it feel to deliver this information. Step 3, I would say, look at who you're telling it to. Look them in the eye. We don't do this anymore. Look them directly in the eye and notice how they receive it. Are they even listening to you? Notice when they respond, is it automatic? Have you had the same damn conversation about 1,000 times? Notice. It really becomes so interesting when you just break apart your own conversation. It's like, dang it. I'm sitting across from my best friend and we have literally had this conversation 49,000 times. I know exactly where it's going to end. Here's the key. Here's the key. Notice what you notice, feel how you feel. And then see if you can switch it up. This is where it's going to get uncomfortable, right, Bill?
Yeah, right. If you're going to try and change a pattern, and you might have tried this already in your life, but changing a pattern, like injecting, well, could you do something different? Could it be, you could try this or that, and have you been there where like it's rejected like crazy? Like, what? No, that's not possible. You don't understand. That's ridiculous. No. So that right, it helps to keep that pattern in place. That auto defense mechanism of changing that story is not mentally possible. Now, the last part of this is really simple, and that the really simple thing is to begin to rotate your eyeballs. You look across the ceiling, look up, and look across the ceiling very slowly. And if you keep telling the story, whatever story that is, you look down one wall, down across the floor, up the other wall, and keep telling the story. Now, as you tell this story and you're looking around, what you'll start to notice is the story will transform. You will have, not instantly, but over a little bit of time, all of a sudden, new thoughts, new ways of looking at it will all start to occur to you. And
yeah, it's true. And you know what? There's that. I mean, if you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're talking to your friend, you start rolling your eyes, that is not going to be received well. But there are some sneaky ways of doing this, or in a business meeting. You can literally like just lean back in your chair and kind of tip your head out, and look at the ceiling a little bit, put your finger on your chin. It signals I'm thinking, right? Totally acceptable. Gosh, you know what? I just realized that I forgot to tell you something really cool. Acceptable, right? Or if you're going to let your eyes go to the left and the right, you can kind of do the same thing. If you put your hand on your chin, kind of turn your head or rest your chin, you can move your eyes that direction. And again, it appears as though you're thinking, and you are. Your brain is actually accessing a new part. So, eyes to the left, we're going to get into that linear brain. And you can shift the other way. If your eyes are moving to the right, you're in your left brain, linear, mathematic, stream of time. If you move your eyes opposite to the left, you're going to be in your right brain, creativity, empathy, compassion. You can notice yourself and how the story changes or how the topic changes completely. The other thing you can do is to look down. If you put your hands on your lap, and rub your thighs, you're touching your own legs, and it really is acceptable to look down at that point, Notice how your conversation changed. So there are socially acceptable ways to try this on, and it's kind of fun to see whether or not you agree with your own story. But what most likely happen is the story will come out differently because now the neurological pattern has been shifted. Even if you don't try this part, if you simply notice what's coming out of your mouth, notice what you're talking about. Notice how it's an I always, I never. Notice the surface tension on the body. Does it feel stale, the conversation? And you can simply shift the conversation to something true in your life that's been good in the last couple of days. Oh my gosh, I got a new pair of shoes. They're super cute. You know what they look like? These are lady conversations, Bill. Or if it were Bill, gosh, you know what? I was down at the marina the other day and I saw the most beautiful yacht. You know what? She was this length and the shine on her was gorgeous, right? Just simply talking about a fact of something you did, you saw, you experienced that you enjoyed. It'll break the pattern. You and that person that you've had that conversation with 1,000 times will now be on to something else. But I'll tell you what will happen. The person will try to tie you back into the old conversation. They really will, don't they?
Yeah.
But think of something else. Interesting, fun. My mom used to say that, and I think this is an old quote, might have been from Einstein, that average people talk about other people, intelligent people talk about ideas, and somewhere in the middle, you're talking about things.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can shift the conversation even into an idea state, I had this really cool idea yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I know it may sound weird, but follow me, right? You're now changing the timeline of your own life. You've moved yourself up the ladder of consciousness, even just a little. And now you're into a future that looks different. If you continue the same conversation that I always, I never, I should have, I didn't, my mom was, my dad was, if you continue that, you're literally rehashing your past again and again and again and again in the most unresourceful way. If you can move into your future in something that is lovely, even if it's just a tiny idea, you've now started to reroute your neural pathway and your actual experience of the future. Why would that be, Bill?
Well, it's a really interesting thing when it's done in combination with your eyes. You are reprogramming your neurology. So your eyes, your brain, your spinal cord are one neurological system. And the the feeling comes first. So all of a sudden you're looking in a new place with your eyes and you're telling a new story. This this gives you access to the full range of your neurological system. If you watch when that person is telling their story, their eyes are going to dart to the exact same places that they always have. And if you get good, you'll notice, hey, that person always does this. So the eyes are the window into the soul or brain of a person. You can actually see what's going on. Anyway, it's a really super easy technique. And this is just one small part of Cognomovement where you can get in and reprogram you for a different story and then a different life.
Yeah, that's true. And it's a small part of Cognomovement, but it's also a big part of life. When you start to notice, I'm stuck in my life, and you notice you're just doing the same thing again and again all day, every day, you realize why you're stuck. So noticing yourself and your own patterns is huge. Shifting them even slightly changes the way you feel. It interrupts your pattern. So let's say, for example, you and a friend, you go to the same coffee shop, you've gone there for years, and you have the same conversation you've always had. And maybe it's about how the world is crap, or that person in your life that's terrible is still terrible, or your financial situation, whatever it is you find yourself in an old stale habit about. Invite that friend to a new place. Go somewhere else. Break your pattern. I promise you it's going to be way more uncomfortable than you imagine. That's our place. This is what we do. La Cosa Nostra, our things. We do these things. Shift the pattern, interrupt yourself. Let's go somewhere new. I'd love to go to that new place on the water. I don't know what it's going to be like, but let's see. If we don't like it, we can make fun of it. You know what I mean? Let's not go to breakfast. Let's go to lunch. And let's go to this new place. Make a challenge with your friends that you're going to go somewhere new and you're going to order something different. You can't even imagine. Try ordering for each other. Make it a game. But what you're going to do is on purpose, notice what your story is. Notice what you're talking about. What's the theme and how it feels. Notice if you're in a rut. If you're in a rut in your conversation, you're likely in a rut in your life. Choose a way to shift it. This is another big part. We're really at the end of the show here. We've got like 2 minutes, but making a conscious choice about what you talk about, what you think about, where you go, and what you do, and choosing something new will actually make your brain and body younger. It really gets the juices flowing. It gets you thinking in a new way. When you change perspective, like going to a new place, you literally change perspective. So I think the theme of this show really is, Bill, really be aware of yourself in your conversations. If what you're talking about is what you want your future to be, keep going. If what you're talking about is what your past was and is not what you want in the future, shift it. You'll change your body, you'll change your mind, and you'll change your life.
You can even begin when you start telling a new story like that, move your couch, move your chair.
Yeah.
Move where the TV is. Just move it and change it up. It will support that new neurological connection. Now, Liz has wrote an amazing book, actually 2 amazing books that are free. These are free ebooks that are on our website. You get them when you go in, you put in your email address, and they'll be sent to you if you like. One of them is called Suffering is Optional. How do you like the title of that? And the other one is called The Tiny Book of Big Manifesting. Go there, cognomovement.com. That's cognomovement.com. Cogno, like cognitive, and movement. And that's one word, Cognomovement. cognomovement.com. You can get those 2 free ebooks and enjoy. They'll change your life.
And now it is possible to listen to UK Health Radio and this program, New Life Perspectives radio show, anywhere that you like to get your podcasts. Look for hashtag Wellbeing Podcast, and you can find the whole network anywhere that you like to watch or listen to your podcast. You can also follow Bill and I on YouTube at Cognomovement. All right. Until next week, be safe and be well. Thanks for being here, Bill McKenna.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here with us on the New Life Perspective radio show. For more information or to find out more about the work that Bill and I do, please visit us at cognomovement.com or email us at info@cognomovement.com. See you again soon.